Hello, everyone. We will give everyone just a few more moments to join in. See, we already have a good number of people rolling in. So we will get started here in just a second. Alrighty, well, I see some people joining in, so I will go ahead and get started. My name is Summer Stockton, and I am with the Shelby Report, and we are very excited to have Toshiba and CBS Northstar with us today to sort of give us some case studies to reveal how to drive success in our Grocerant. Just a little bit of housekeeping rules to start off. Everyone is in a listen-only mode. But we will be having a question and answer session at the end. So if you have any questions during the course of the program, please use the questions or the chat feature on your control panel to type in your question, and we'll make sure we get to it at the end of the presentation. But with that, I will turn it over to Steve.
All right, thank you so much, Summer. Thank you, everybody. I've got Jeremy Julian, our CRO and founder of CBS Custom Business Solutions, here today to talk to us, as well as Michael Gartside from Toshiba Global Commerce Solutions. He's our Global Services Director for PaaS and Client Success. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today on this webinar for the Shelby Report. I think we've got a really exciting topic for our attendees. So let's go ahead and jump right in, if we will. So I think what we want to talk about here, guys, is basically, how we can help restaurants and grocers combine that experience as a melded group of grocerants, if you will. So grocery stores, as we know, have been trying to figure out how to get more people in the door. And one of the ways they've been able to do that is to offer restaurant type of services in their stores themselves, whether it's prepackaged foods or hot foods from a grill, or even a salad bar, something as simple as that, to be able to pick up something very quickly, one meal, maybe a second meal that they could bring home, put in the refrigerator or something like that. So, I think we see there's a lot of untapped potential there for grocers to expand their experience for their customers. So, Jeremy, I think you've seen a couple of our partners and some of our clients today do that. Do you have, an example you can maybe talk to a little bit about, one that you've been working on recently?
Yeah, and I know we'll talk more about it throughout the conversation, Steve, but at the end of the day, when we're talking to retailers, the big thing is how do they create a frictionless commerce? Even though it's a buzzword, it's the frictionless commerce idea of how do I go in and get more, time is the non-renewable resource that everybody has the same limited amount of time. And so how do I maximize the time that I'm going to feed my family or feed myself? And so grocery oftentimes is a large percentage of a household food spend, but if I can also double dip and get a hot prepared meal and not have to worry about making it at home, the grocers and retailers that we're talking to are creating these hybrids all the time. The flip side, restaurants are doing the same. They're having non-prepared foods, that are packaged goods oftentimes. And so we'll talk a lot today about how the Toshiba solution, along with our solution, have tied those things together in, I think we've got 4 or 5 case studies that we'll talk through on today's call.
Okay. Sounds good. So, one of the things that I've seen in talking to our retailers, whether they're grocery, whether they're specialty, hospitality, any of these, there's a lot of challenges that they face in terms of maintaining their hardware, software, services, maintenance, everything, right? So they have, some of the older, more established retailers have, aging infrastructure that they need to manage. They've got, applications that are very old, and they're really concerned with the system availability of their products in the stores themselves. So they're worried about system uptime. They want to make sure that, there's interoperability with their hardware and their software. So, there's a lot of disparate things that they see out in, stores, whether it's, a restaurant itself, like you just mentioned here, Jeremy, or an established grocer that, is trying to expand and offer more restaurant type of meals and takeaways. So one of the things we talk to our customers about at Toshiba is, how do we reduce risk? How do we mitigate and help you plan for a 5, 10, 15-year life cycle of your hardware or your plans for your infrastructure at the point of sale? So, we're seeing it in the news every day, the shrink that, people are experiencing when we talk about convenience and gas. You see people have a lot of shrink in terms of people walking away with some of that merchandise, and how do we develop loss prevention type of solutions and other things that will help mitigate that security risk that they face today. So with that, we understand there's a lot of different grocery pain points that, our customers are facing on a day-to-day basis. So, Jeremy, what are the things that you've run across with some of these things that you've seen with grocers in your experience with CBS?
I think going back to the point that you brought up earlier, Steve, it's they're trying to figure out how to get people back into the store and to engage with the brand, but they don't necessarily, if they don't create a good experience for the customer, they're not going to engage with it. If it's too hard for the operators, if it's too hard for the customer to do these things, they're not going to go. If it's easier to go run through the drive-through at a big box restaurant brand and then go to the grocery store, they're going to do that. And so from an operator side, it's reconciliation. Does the tech play well together? It's managing the multiple price tiers, because if you've got to manage them in two different systems, which a lot of people that do have a full scale restaurant inside of their brand have a different piece of tech, and the customer, it's almost like they're going into two different stores. We've all been into one of those grocery stores that you have to go to the deli counter, ring up your sandwich, pay for your sandwich, and then go take your cart of groceries to the front. We've built it in. And so again, back to the frictionless commerce. The other piece that I would say is the digitization. Everybody wants to be able to do everything from their mobile, whether that's check out for their groceries or order their food ahead while they're coming through. And so these are the pain points that people are trying to solve, because again, if you don't get the consumers what they want, they'll stop coming. If it's not a good experience, not just the food, but the full-on experience, whether it's the ordering experience, the payment experience, the pickup experience, the food, it's all part of the equation. And again, we've seen people do it and not do it well, and we've seen people do it and do it well. And so a lot of times we're doing these things. And then back to your loss prevention, I think it's the reconciliation. When you have two different systems, you've got two different sets of books that you need to close. Part of what we'll talk a little bit about later on is we've got an integrated solution that ties those two solutions together, where you can have a single source of truth for both your prices, for your items, for your guests, as well as your end of day closing procedures are all going to be exactly the same, regardless of whether you rang it up in the restaurant, the grocerant portion, or you're in the grocery store.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really good point in terms of mobile ordering, right? So consumers, I think at this point, are pretty comfortable about ordering, whether it's some simple groceries to be able to pick up as they drive through at the location, or even ordering prepared food for them to pick up. So your point of, maybe having two locations to go to, like a restaurant and then a grocery, well, if they can combine that experience so that there's one location and you can get everything at one time, it makes it much more efficient for the consumer, and therefore repeat visits will happen more often because they're used to having a more efficient experience at the grocery itself. So that's a great point that you bring up there.
Absolutely. And one other thing, I guess, back to your previous slide, Steve, that I want to, before you get too far into this, is I think that the marrying of your software solution along with your hardware solution and the flexibility of that is also critical, because again, you can't create the right guest experience unless the technology is there to do that. And so whether it's at the front of the store, it's mobile in the center of the store when people are walking around, or it's at the prepared foods area, you've got to have technology that's flexible, that can allow you those capabilities and reliable. Because again, if I go into the Grocerant and I go to order food and the POS terminal's down, or I can't go onto my mobile app and do these things, it ends up killing the guest experience, and people will give you a second chance maybe, but they likely won't give you a third chance. So you got to figure out how to do it right.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, because, we will talk a little bit about that end-to-end type of solution that Toshiba offers today a little bit later on in the presentation. But I think a grocer or a restaurant wants to make sure that, they're working with an organization that's global in nature, has a lot of depth of experience, be able to create custom solutions just for what that one individual retailer wants to do. And, we've got a long history of working with large box grocers, as well as, many restaurants across not only North America, but globally as well. So, I mentioned that, we're working together, and we've been working together for a very long time, as you all know, Jeremy. Our passion at Toshiba Global Commerce Solutions is retail. We're devoted to working on a custom solution that makes sure it works for that grocer. So, we've been, we're legacy IBM retail store solutions. So, we've been in the business for well over 50 years of, supporting retailers, whether it's, general merchandise, whether it's groceries, whether it's hospitality, specialty, convenience, whatever it is. We've got a long history of doing that. And partnering with a valued reseller such as yourself, Jeremy, at CBS, we want to make sure that we work together to find the right solution for these customers.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of why I get the privilege to come hang out is because we've worked together for almost 30 years. And really, we've looked at the solutions that are going into these places. And even though Steve and his counterparts might look at me and go, why did you put that there? Or me or somebody else on our team, at the end of the day, you guys create flexible hardware that enables the software to do what the guests need to do, in addition to some of the software that you guys produce. From a CBS perspective, we are a group that ultimately puts the customer at the center of the center of the transaction. They need to understand, and they need to be able to do what they want to do. Not all grocers are the same, not all restaurants are the same, and so they need to be able to make their guest experience unique. And our job is to enable the hardware and software to allow them to do that. Some places want to do self-service, some places don't. Some people want to do, they want a full fine dining experience. Some people are looking to do something less. Again, we'll talk later about one brand that's got 5 different operating modes inside of one store. They've got counter service, they've got pickup, they've got third-party delivery, they've got regular grocery, they've got a full-service Italian restaurant inside of a grocery store. And again, we'll talk about those things, but without a partner that understands what they're trying to do as a business and then pivoting, and whether it be writing software, working with the hardware providers like Toshiba to drive those solutions, they're not going to find it. And so our goal is to put those customers and work with your vision of what you want your retail establishment to look like, and then we'll continue to pivot and modify and change to meet your needs.
Exactly. That's a great summation of the value that you bring to the table for the customers at the local level that Toshiba may not be able to reach. So that's a great way of putting that, Jeremy. So thanks.
It's almost like I've done it before.
So team, what I want to do is just basically kind of touch upon what our design strategy is here at Toshiba Global Commerce Solutions. So we want to be sure that we deliver the highest availability for our products, as well as the lowest total cost of ownership. We understand that grocers and restaurants have a very thin margin of profit that they're managing to. So they want to make sure that they manage their CapEx and their OpEx as closely as possible. So we design our solutions so that they're serviceable, they're reliable, they're usable from an ergonomics perspective, and they're flexible. So we have a lot of different choices in terms of the technology that you have available to you, whether it's an all-in-one point of sale system, or whether it's a distributed model, if it's a kiosk, if it's a self-service, self-checkout type of environment. We've got a lot of different experiences that we can help design for our retailers and our customers. One thing we'll touch on a little bit later on is the retail hardened message that we deliver for our customers every day. And it's basically we go above and beyond our testing of our competition. So best example I can usually give is our temperature testing. This industry standard temperature test goes from 0 degrees centigrade to 30. We go from 0 to 40. And why do we do that? We do it because we're installing our systems in a wide variety of extreme environments, whether it's in a tropical situation in LATAM or whether it's in Canada and the Nordics and it's very cold areas. So we want to ensure that our systems are ruggedized and, as my friend Jeremy would say, built like a tank. So we wanted to be able to deliver on that promise, and that's how we design for retail at Toshiba. So I want to kind of talk a little bit now, Jeremy, about some of the use cases that we see with these grocerants today in terms of, buy online, pick up in store, things like that, and some of the things that you think are really, what kind of picture you're up when you start having those conversations with some of these grocerants?
I mean, the grocerant side of things, the people that get it, I don't want to say get it. I think it's one of those things that when they understand the value proposition of having higher margin items, being able to be produced, reasons to drive traffic, how do I now engage with the consumer to get them to, like we talked about earlier, do one-stop shopping. They've got dinner, prepared dinner. On my way home from soccer practice, I can pick up dinner, but I can also do my normal grocery shopping on my way out. I can have it as a destination. I could go shopping with my family, let my wife go shop. I can hang out and have a meal with my kids if I want to. There's the places that are in high density, the grocery stores that are in high density. They want to be a lunch spot, and they want to be that active lunch spot that people can come to and get a sandwich or get a pizza or get some fried chicken, because oftentimes they have these products and their margins are significantly higher than restaurants. So from a margin stack perspective, that's huge. On the tech side, unfortunately, they don't necessarily think about what the difference is between a prepared foods or a make-ready food and a grocery. Guests don't want a sandwich that's been sitting there for 6 hours that has mayonnaise and lettuce and tomatoes and ketchup or whatever. Ketchup on a sandwich, probably not that, but they don't want the sandwich that's been prepared at 9 in the morning at lunchtime, because it's not the same quality that I might get at a sandwich shop. And so figuring out how to customize those solutions for the guest, have them ready so you have hot food hot, cold food cold, where and when they want it, is what we've been helping them come around to, because they want to be able to be in the space, but they don't necessarily always understand and comprehend, because they've always thought about that. The second piece that I think in grocerants that people underestimate is the fact that in a traditional restaurant food service application, you can have essentially unlimited prices for an item. So you can have that hamburger, and if it's ordered on DoorDash, if it's $9.99 in store, it might be $12.99 on DoorDash. Right. In a grocery store point of sale, historically, a can of green beans is the same cost for a can of green beans, whether I order them online or I order them in store. Whereas most restaurants, 99% of the restaurants, if you were to go to their own online ordering menu and you go to DoorDash's menu, there's a price difference. Exactly. For those listeners out there that didn't know that, guess what? They're getting charged to get that food to you through DoorDash, and thus you're paying as the consumer a bit more. And so those capabilities are huge. On the convenience side, it's a similar conversation. We've all seen convenience stores. I happen to live in Texas. There's, the racetracks and the QTs of the world. They continue to expand. Every time they remodel, they're constantly adding additional prepared foods to get you to stop and not just get gas, but get you to stop and have more of your spend inside of that. And so how do I make it seamless? Ordering at the pump, ordering from my phone when I'm driving up to get gas so that the food is ready, ordering from a kiosk.
That's exactly what I was going to talk about. If you go to a grocery store and you start shopping, and you think to yourself, I'm kind of hungry now. Is there a kiosk local in the grocerant that I could just walk up to, put my order in, continue shopping in the grocery store, know that that's going to be ready in 5 to 10 minutes, and then circle back around? So one of the things
So yeah, and again, we'll talk about it in the specific restaurants, but we've got a restaurant today that's taking and allowing not even a kiosk. While the kiosk is awesome, we also have a way that you can order. You could post QR codes throughout the store. You could scan it from your phone, order your sandwich, order your pizza. You know, we've all probably frequented Costco in the past. The red phone that's in the middle of the Costco store that you used to order pizza from years ago. Like we have that solution, but it's from a mobile phone where it pulls up, and miraculously, we can have it ask you for your phone number and text you when the food is ready. So now you don't have to stand around the deli counter waiting for your food. You know that it's ready, and they can even put it in a hot locker for you so that you can go pick it up and scan a QR code on your phone to pick it up at the hot locker or the cold locker if you wanted to. So all of those solutions exist, whether you're in convenient, you're in restaurant, you're in grocery. The software allows you that capability, powered, you know, along with the power of the hardware, and making sure that the traditional retail experience is seamless for those guests is part of what we're doing.
Exactly.
Hey, Steve, let me jump in there a minute too.
Sure.
You know, as I'm looking through that, and absolutely agree with what Jeremy's saying, right? Did you really got to cater to that individual customer? And, you know, as I'm looking at this, my lens is a little bit different. I kind of look at what Jeremy's doing, what we're doing from a hardware perspective is that's the happy path when things are going well. Everything's up and running. So my view is from the serviceability, the supportability of that equipment, and making sure that it's up and running, so that, you know, proactive availability services is a service that monitors that equipment. So if I'm looking at these three areas, I'm really thinking about, you know, a convenience store, probably, you know, most restaurants, they have a limited number of point of purchases. And when I think about, you know, a grocery store and restaurants, then, you know, it's a store within a store. And so I may want to run in and just grab whatever that is and get out. And if that registers down, then I've got to go stand in line. And so there are other, you know, scenarios that may not play out nicely. And so that monitoring of that, understanding, you know, not only if it's down, but there are monitors in the equipment that are telling us and giving us clues something's going on. And we'll talk about it a little bit more later, right? But it's not just the I'm up or down and what's going on, but that preventative maintenance and understanding that it's in a situation where tomorrow or a week from now it may be going down, and we can get ahead of it by monitoring that equipment as well.
And that's a great point, Mike, because, you know, these places may only have 1 or 2 point of sale locations, and if 1 or 2 of those go down, they may be completely down. So I know our PAS services, our proactive availability services solution, is a great way to help maintain, you know, 100% uptime, you know, 99.99%, whatever it is. So we can anticipate any potential issues and address them before they even become an issue. And that's, you know, we'll talk about that more later, as you just mentioned, but that's really a critical point with any of these segments in terms of being able to support their customers. So
well, I think as you're going to the next slide, Steve, I'll just say everybody's trying to figure out how to increase wallet share, because it's been getting eaten up by all of these different people, because the hybrid model continues to get to pivot. And so ensuring that you can take that retail transaction, to Michael's point, because if your POS is down and you can't take payment, you can't take the order, you know, you're stuck. So everybody's trying to figure out, how do I go up the value chain within people's household budget every day, every week, every month? And sometimes that looks like adding prepared food. Sometimes that looks like adding retail. Sometimes that looks like adding fuel. And without the right technology solutions that are available and reliable, none of it matters. Exactly.
And that's really, you know, the lowest TCO that we measure across all of our solutions, whether it's, you know, general merchandise, whether it's convenience, whether it's restaurants, grocers. We want to make sure all of our systems and solutions are reliable. We want to make sure it's easy to manage. We want to make sure that they're versatile. So everything that we've been talking about so far during our conversation today just reinforces that whole peace of mind for, you know, a grocerant, restaurant, grocer, whomever it is, that want to make sure that their technology is going to be up and running. It's rugged, it's durable, it's reliable, and that we're monitoring it and making sure it stays that way for the retailers. So, you know, these are just some of the proof points that we, you know, constantly monitor as we, you know, put our solutions into place with our retailers, as well as working with, you know, value partners like Custom Business Solutions. So with that, I kind of want to just talk one quick second here about what our total solution portfolio looks like. And I talked a little bit about hardware, I talked software, I talked services, right? So these are just some of the things, the proof points under each one of those categories. So not only do we have, you know, hardware point of sale systems like an all-in-one, or if it's a distributed model, we've also got a full line of single and dual station printers, as well as self-service options as well. You know, we talked a little bit about the software. You know, I know Northstar is a you know, a gold star in the industry for our restaurant and grocers, but we also offer additional solutions from Toshiba, such as Alera, such as Ace, such as Check, things like that, that really enhance the experience for the retailer itself. You know, you talk a little bit about being able to order online, Jeremy, a little bit earlier, and be able to take payments and take different types of payments. So people are using Apple Pay today, Google Pay, Samsung Pay. You know, you have your Visa and MasterCard payment systems as well. So we are constantly working with our retailers to ensure that we're able to support any type of pay that a customer wants to use. And, you know, again, to what Michael talked about a little bit earlier, wall-to-wall maintenance, PaaS, you know, augmented reality training for their associates. You know, these are the things that we're constantly thinking about, making sure that we have the right offerings for those that want to be able to support their customers on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, you talked a little bit about the case studies, right? And I think this is a great point where, you know, you've got a great story to tell here, Jeremy. I want to give you the time to really talk a little bit about this for our viewers here today, and, you know, understand how you've been able to help each one of these brands, you know, develop a much better and robust solution for their customer set.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for giving me that opportunity. And I'm not, you guys can read the screen, so I don't necessarily need to go through that. But the biggest one, you know, and I talked about it earlier, the photograph on the top right is a full service restaurant attached to a very high density, high traffic mall in Southern California. Happens to be in the Irvine Spectrum for anybody that's aware of where Irvine's at. This is a full Neapolitan style Italian restaurant. They make pizzas, pastas, and it's a full sit down restaurant. They've got about 80 seats, 90 seats, plus a full bar with wine and full drinks. And it's attached to a specialty grocery store that has high-end products from all over the world. It also happens to have 4 other, and this is Newfound Market, it's part of the Bristol Farms family of restaurants and grocery stores based out of Southern California. They have 4 other walk-up restaurants, a sushi bar, a sandwich place that does Nashville hot chicken sandwiches. There's a vegetarian place, and I don't remember the 4th one, maybe a burger place. They also have a deli counter where you can get prepared foods and make deli, you know, sliced meats and those kind of things, as well as full deli sandwiches. And then that picture in the lower right is a full cafe. And that cafe is like any other Starbucks where you can get coffee, you can get any kind of coffee drinks, you can get, there's a cold case there in the front where you can pick up fruits and pastries. And all of that is tied into their end of day checkout. And so fantastic, you know, like all-in-one solution. The big thing that I talked about earlier was a pain point, and it really goes to who we are as partners and who we are as an organization from the software side. This property happens to be just a few miles from our home office in Southern California. So our team frequents going to lunch there. And one day they happen to walk by the deli counter. And like most deli counters at any kind of busy grocery store, there's a line. You go up, you pull a ticket, or you get a number, and you go wait to talk to the guy behind the deli counter to order what it is that you want. And then historically, you wait, and you might go 3 feet away, 5 feet away, 10 feet away to go to the cheese counter or whatever else, but you stay really close to that deli counter because you want to make sure that nobody takes your roast beef that you had cut, or nobody takes your turkey. This deli counter happens to also do full prepared foods. They've got brisket, they've got turkey sandwiches, they've got like pasta dishes. So it's a almost full restaurant in addition to being able to get sliced meats and cheeses. And so we came to them, and the box on the lower right there is order prep and text to the guest. And we changed the ordering mode where I now come up, I take my number, and I'd like a half pound of turkey, a half pound of roast beef, and the pasta plate, for lunch. Okay, so I do that. Hello, Mr. Customer, can I get your phone number for you? And then they walk through this whole process of, hey, Steve, as soon as your food's ready, we'll send you a text. Go enjoy the rest of your shopping experience. You don't have to worry. Nobody's going to take your food. We'll make sure that you get that. They went from having 20 to 30 people standing in front of that deli counter in this busy times to almost no one, because they know they can now go finish their shopping experience.
Right.
It solves two problems. One, now the guests can now go spend more money. The consumers can now go spend more money. The second thing is now there's no longer the customer that walks up and goes, oh, I was going to go order a sandwich, but now there's 30 people waiting in front of me. I no longer, and they could have already ordered, and they could all be just waiting for their food to be prepared. But I've had that experience as a consumer, as I walk up and I go, I'm not dealing with that. I got no time on my lunch hour to go deal with that. And so the throughput and the amount of sales spend that we've increased within that deli counter has been huge. The integration, which is, oh, sorry.
It sounds like just the efficiency of that alone can help drive additional revenue for each one of these places.
Unequivocally. They drove from the first few weeks. And again, we happen to just walk in and go, why is everybody standing around? And we're like, hey guys, if we could do something like this, would this help you? And they're like, yes, please. Can we do that? And while it took a little bit of staff training, it was a huge boon to their top line sales, to their customer satisfaction. They were able to drive that. And then the second piece that was really, really, really critical from a commerce perspective for this customer is, if you're working in the food service application and you want to go pay at the front of the store, or if you're working in the grocery store and you want to pay at the prepared foods area, those things needed to be able. So I needed to be able to take a bottle of Italian soda and take it out of the grocery area and ring it up on the restaurant point of sale along with that pasta plate. And historically, you couldn't do that with the full prep that says pasta plate with no Parmesan coming in through third-party delivery. And so we've allowed the capability through some software engineering to allow the grocery store to operate like a grocery store, the restaurant to operate like a restaurant, but the two sets of sales can sync. I can go to a self-checkout in an Ace world and take that sandwich and scan it. I can take that bottle of Italian soda to that deli counter and ring it up on a scanner and allow you to pay frictionless from anywhere in the store, from any piece of technology, really ultimately allowing the guests to do anything and everything that they need to do. This really started about 5.5 years ago with a customer that kind of came and said, we've got this problem, how do we solve it? And while we've done a lot in the last 5.5 years, it's really been this iteration, and every one of these brands that are down across the bottom has done some portion of this. Then they add on third-party delivery. Then they add on catering to the office buildings that are across the street. Then they add on staff ordering with discounts and meal plans and those kind of things. So these are all things that have continued to grow. We can talk about each one of them, but I think those are two critical pieces that people need to understand is how do we increase throughput and increase sales? How do we increase guest satisfaction? And how do we make it frictionless for the consumer so that they can order anywhere and pay anywhere without having to worry about, oh, do I need to go to that line or do I need to go to this line? It doesn't matter. You can go anywhere you want. We've all had that experience where you walk up and you go, let me order this, and they go, well, you have to pay. It's like, well, no, I'm still in the same building. Why do I have to go pay you and then not be able to go transfer my transaction to somewhere else? So
right. It's all about transaction efficiency, right? Which eventually leads to increased foot traffic. Mm-hmm. The more efficient you can have a transaction at the point of sale, whether it's, like you said, it's front or in the rear or in the restaurant or another location at a kiosk, the quicker you can make it for any of us, because nobody likes to stand in line. I mean, I don't care if you're shopping in a grocery store, if you're shopping at a fashion retailer, wherever it is, you don't want to stand in line. So if there's ways that you can make that more efficient for somebody, you're gonna put in the back of their mind, hey, I want to come here again because this was an easy transaction for me to do. And, I'm already, there's a certain level of brand loyalty, store loyalty, restaurant loyalty that people have. And if you deliver on the promise of making it easy every time, you're going to see repeat business. But the more, I don't want to say roadblocks, but the more hurdles you put in front of people, the more they're going to remember that and say, I don't really want to deal with that hassle because it was so tough for me to do it in the past. So it sounds like with these locations, you were really able to increase the efficiency for these restaurants and retailers.
Yeah, one last thing that I want to talk about, and I forgot to talk about it just earlier, Steve, is the ability to line bust, whether it be grocery or now you've got mobile POS that you can take just about anywhere. Mobile orders, mobile payments, so now the capability to go do that curbside pickup. So I ordered it online and I go do curbside, but I'm like, oh, I forgot so-and-so was going to be home. Can you throw another burger on that order for me? How do you do that today in that curbside pickup? You can't. You got to go take the order on a piece of paper, go run inside, go punch it in a POS. Now we've got the ability to do mobile order and mobile pay from anywhere in the store. And that, again, frictionless capability for people to be able to do that in a reliable way creates brand loyalty and creates foot traffic that is unquestionable.
Exactly. So let's go ahead. Those are all great examples, and we'll continue to touch upon some of these case studies that we've talked about here. But I want to go ahead and kind of move on a little bit and, talk a little bit about CBS Northstar. You talked a little bit about the history of the company here, Jeremy. You talk about some of the key benefits and everything. Where have you seen the greatest success with CBS, and where do you see the growth of the organization going forward, and how you can add value for some of our retailers or grocerants?
I mean, I think we've talked about it throughout the whole conversation is our key benefits is we're entrepreneurial. We understand, even though we deal with some of the biggest brands in the country, we understand that not all systems are created equal. Not everybody wants to be able to use technology to change the brand perception of what it is that they're doing. And so helping them understand that is critical. And so for us, we are only successful when our customers are successful and our partners are successful. And so it goes to the core of who we are as an organization. We are constantly listening. We are constantly out in the field, going and doing site visits, going and talking to people about what's working, what's not working, where's your vision at? We, as a brand, we read people's 10Ks if they're publicly traded to hear what their CEOs are saying they want to do as a retailer. And then we go out, whether it be to NRF, the NRA show, the multi-unit restaurant technology show, talking to partners like you guys at Toshiba to say, they need this. Steve, how do we get that for them? And then we bring them into the conversation. And so those are the things that we do. And we use the depth of our knowledge and understanding as well as our technical capabilities, whether that be on the hardware engineering side with you guys or other partners, or the software engineering side that we've got a very talented team that knows this stuff really, really well. We work in partnership to create those solutions that are going to ultimately drive the throughput and allow them to build the guest experience that people want.
Cool. That sounds like a great approach for a lot of these retailers, and I know you guys have been a great success over these last 30 years. So with that, Jeremy, what I'd like to do at this point is kind of pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about the retail hardened message that I touched upon earlier with our products. So for the viewers here today, all of our hardware solutions that we offer from Toshiba are designed, built, and tested for different elements in the food environment. So we have back kitchen operations that we help support. We've got kiosks, we've got self checkout, we've got all-in-one point of sale. So some of the things that we do to test on these, we do electrostatic discharge, we do dust and lint, we do liquid tests, as you can see there in the picture itself. We do touch testing for the capacitive touch on the screens, so you can ensure that it'll support up to 10,000 touches without failure. We have a lot of different type of peripheral offerings, such as barcode scanners that you can use on the side of the display itself. You've got fingerprint readers. We've got security type of solutions. We've also got many others that you'll see here in the portfolio, but we want to make sure that whatever total solution that we implement for a grocerant is easy to deploy, easy to manage, it's flexible, and best of all, like Michael talked a little bit about here in a little bit, is it's a very serviceable solution as well. So with that, I want to kind of give Mike a little bit of time here to talk a little bit about proactive availability services, as well as everything that really accomplishes. So Mike, if you could take a few minutes for the viewers here.
Sure, thanks, Steve. So I'll probably need to give a little definition of what really proactive availability services is, and that is our kind of the feedback loop, right? Everything that Steve just talked about, everything that Jeremy's talking about, again, that's all the happy path. It's then how is it really acting in the real world? And so our wall-to-wall services, we're not limited to servicing Toshiba equipment. We service anything and everything within the store. And with that in mind, proactive availability services is a wall-to-wall and moving to a wall-to-wall solution that covers things beyond point of sale. You know, that's our bread and butter. That's what we do every day, but that's not where we're stopping. You know, we're looking not only at the hardware itself, but the application layer. We all know that those two things have to, you know, be connected. I can't ring up an item and print the receipt and everything work normally if both of those things aren't working. And so we're monitoring both sides of the house, and we're able to do that, you know, with agents that are on the registers. We've implemented daily scales, so we can actually see if those are up and running. We've got UPS battery backups, so things that are, you know, may not even be being used on a regular basis, but when it's an emergency, you want them to be up.
Yes,
and so
definitely.
And so it's not just, you know, we've built the infrastructure to behind the scenes take care of things automatically. So the store doesn't have to call in to a help desk to log a call that then gets dispatched to a technician. We're doing that all kind of, like I said, behind the scenes. There is a UI, so I can see my enterprise. I can see all of my restaurants. I can see all of my grocery stores. I can see within each one of them and see each one of the registers and if they're up and down from a corporate location. So you can monitor that and see how those facilities are running. Many times, you know, when you're relying on a store associate, employee to call something in, they're like, oh, I've got another one. I'll call that in later. And then later becomes never. And now the other register, right? If I'm in that store within a store situation goes down and now I have no registers, that creates an emergency. Now it's a critical 7-1. I've got to rush somebody out there to get that back up for them. So that's kind of, you know, what we're trying to accomplish and are accomplishing through our proactive availability services solution within our wall-to-wall organization. You don't have to have wall-to-wall to use PAS. It's standalone and can be used independently. Looking, you know, we pulled out some use cases specifically that we've seen. I really want to focus on the last two because I think they apply very well to what we've been talking about today. So, you know, I talked about that automation piece and getting things replaced before the store ever calls them in. And so we've had, you know, feedback from retailers that are using the solution. In most cases, the technician checks in with a manager, says, hey, I'm here, and I'm here to fix the printer on register 2. And we got feedback that, you know, that manager actually called their home office and said, whatever you're doing, don't stop, because I was literally getting ready to call that in. So we were there ready to fix it before they'd even reported it. So I think a great success story, you know, and what we're delivering there from a PAS perspective. And then, you know, that proactive monitoring. We talked about the monitors that are built into the hardware that are giving us information, really how they're being used in the real world. Steve talked about how, you know, we do everything we can on the front end to make them retail hardened. You know, what does that really look like? So we've got sensors for CPU temperature, we talked about that, fan speed, things like that. So we had a situation where in the deli at a grocery store, their register CPU temperature was increasing. It was above what we would have expected. And so we saw that proactively. We went out and sure enough, it was right beside the heater for where the chicken is. And it's like, so now you can make some decisions. Can I move that over? Can I give it, maybe I can't completely move it out of the way, but we can look at that and say, okay, well, now that's normal, right? This is the way it's going to be, but are there ways we can adjust and help really protect the investment of the hardware that's been purchased, keeping it up and running, keeping it and where it doesn't go down, right? So those are some good use cases, I think, for what we're doing in the PaaS space.
You and I had a conversation the other day, Mike, and you were mentioning that one of the examples that you had is one of our grocers was tending to use a single lane more than their other lanes. And because of that, they were overusing the printer, and it was therefore wearing out a little bit more quickly. Right. And I believe your team went out to that grocer and said, hey, maybe you want to kind of switch up your lanes from time to time to help extend the life of your printer. And it wasn't even a case of, hey, we want to sell you a new printer. We instead went out there with the message of, we think you can extend the life of your current products longer if you manage different lanes. And therefore, to me as a retailer, I've been like, wow, they're caring more about my systems and my products rather than trying to sell me something else. And I think that's a great story for a lot of these folks to hear.
Absolutely. Kind of taking that a step further, right? If we're talking about planning and budgeting for the next year, that same type of information can be used in different areas of the business. I focused on kind of that serviceability, that supportability, but I can see that to your point, maybe this printer's been used more. We can rotate the tires. That's kind of how we refer to that, right? I can rotate my tires and make sure they're aging at the same rate. Typically, when a retailer goes out and does a campaign to replace a device, they don't go, oh, I'm only going to do this one. I'm only going to do this one. They do the whole store, and the whole store hasn't aged and isn't being used at the same rate. Flipping them too also may, make it where I have fewer trips to the store to service things, right? So I'm gonna my average time for visits may be increased as a result of that. But from a budgeting perspective, I can see that the SSD drive on a self-checkout, for example, is only going to get older, right? It has a limited number of writes to it. But exactly. I can see that across the enterprise and see where that's going. And instead of spending money to fix it, I can see it, I can plan for it, I know that it's coming, and I can continue to ask other questions. Exactly. Data is a gold mine, right? You can ask other questions of that data. Well, okay, well, I need to go replace the drives. Well, maybe that's not the best use of my money. Maybe I really need to go get the latest model of the self-checkout or whatever it is, and the drives included, because it's really time. So you can make better financial decisions for your environment and make sure that you're not kind of nickel and diming it. Oh, well, today I'm going to do this, the SSD, and tomorrow I'm going to do the monitor. I can kind of look at that holistically. So I think there's some other advantages for the organization to use that data that we're providing out of PaaS as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Mike, for taking us through those services and wall-to-wall and everything else that goes into our solutions. So, team, I want to kind of just touch upon what our hardware portfolio looks like in case you're not familiar with what offerings are from Toshiba Global Commerce Solutions. So we have a full line of hardware that's available here. In the upper left is our all-in-one TCX 810. That's our premium all-in-one system. You can get it with a dual hinge stand, or you can get it with no stand and do it as a pole mounted solution. It's a very flexible one. Multiple processor choices, Celeron i3, i5, and i7. The TCX 900 is our brand new distributed model, just introduced last month in July. It'll be generally available here September 6th. It's a powerful modular system with 13th generation processors from Intel. We also have single and dual station printers, which really round out the entire point of sale experience for customers. But as we were talking here earlier, we also have the ProX hybrid kiosk for those customers that want a kiosk in their Grocerant locations to enable ordering on site. We also have self-checkout systems. So our self-checkout system 7 is a personalized customer-centric solution that will allow people to scan their own items, bag them, be able to pay whatever fashion they would like. And then Jeremy, as you were mentioning earlier here, mobile ordering and line busting, we've got a device available with our mobile operations manager software that really allows for a holistic view of all of the store activities. So with that, team, I just kind of want to wrap up here. I want to thank Jeremy and Michael for the time of going through this presentation with me. Toshiba, we're delivering retail success every day. We're working with grocers, we're working with restaurants, grocerants, working in general merchandise. We want to be able to bring a strategic mix of solutions and innovations for our customers. And we, have greatly appreciated and enjoyed the close partnership that we have with Custom Business Solutions and their Northstar application. And we would, be happy to talk in more detail. At this point, I'd like to go ahead and open it up for questions. We'll be at some events here coming up here, and you can see that on the slide. So Summer, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for a little Q&A.
Absolutely. We did have a few questions that came in as well. I know that there was one person who had asked for some follow-up contact information from everyone. They said it was a fantastic presentation, so thank you so much for the comments. But they did also have a question. Can you name a few specific issues that retailers have experienced when selling prepared foods?
You good with me taking that, Steve?
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, I think we talked about it earlier. I think, Summer, it's one of those, and to our audience, guys, it's understanding that prepared foods are not groceries. They're not, they're a living, breathing organism that the guests are going to want something. They're going to want pizza with light sauce. They're going to want, fried chicken, and they're going to want the mashed potatoes instead of the French fries that come with it. They're going to want to engage, whether it be with the salad bar, with it. They don't want a one-size-fits-all type of environment. While I would encourage any grocers that don't have those one-size-fits-all at a minimum, but if you really want to get into this customization and capabilities, understand that just creates a level of guest satisfaction that you can't get with a one-size-fits-all. And so you've got to have technology that can support that, because if you can't, ultimately you end up giving away the extra avocado that goes on the sandwich because you're not ringing up the avocado that goes on the sandwich. If you're making it to order and you don't have tech that can charge the extra $1 for the avocado, you get stuck. And so those are the things that we've seen that people don't consider. They know when they go into a Jimmy John's that they can add, cheese to it, and it's going to cost them an extra $1 for the cheese. But when they come to the grocery store, they don't, the grocers don't necessarily consider that. And I think it's one of those things in a prepared foods world that you've got to get to a place where you understand that and you have tech enablement to allow the guests to do that.
Yeah, and let me just add on that, Jeremy, just in time manufacturing, we talk about that in a lot of different technology industries, is being able to just be able to have the right parts and pieces in place so that you can go ahead and build something very quickly. It's the same with prepared foods, right? If you know you're having a mobile order come in, you want to make sure you have all of those ingredients on hand to be able to put that together, that sandwich together, or whatever it is. Maybe it's a pound of macaroni salad or whatever, and you have that prepared, ahead of time that you can just scoop out and put it in a container and be able to put a barcode on it and be able to scan it. And that very quickly can be done. But if, to Jeremy's point, if you don't have the technology to help manage that on a day-to-day basis, it makes it that much harder for, the grocerant to be able to satisfy the customer need.
Yeah, one other thing that I would throw at people, Summer, is most people when they're first embarking on prepared foods, is they don't recognize things like run rates. In the grocery store, the back office is going to tell them how many tomatoes that they need to have on the shelf and how much. But when you start to prepare those things and pull them together, they need to understand how many turkey sandwiches they need to have. So how many loaves of bread do they need to make at the bakery to make those turkey sandwiches on a daily basis? Putting in technology that can tell you what your forecast is for a Tuesday at lunch is critical to, again, ensuring that you can have that turkey sandwich available and ready for them when they want it.
Exactly.
Very nice. We also have another question here. Doesn't Toshiba offer a mobile offering that can now offer line busting and outside of the store offerings?
We are coming to market here very shortly with a hardware solution that will enable us to do that. I believe we've made the announcement here just recently. It's a product line for somebody else in the organization. It's not my product, so I'm trying to do this out of rote memory here. But I believe availability will be in the December timeframe for shipping. So I would just say stay tuned for additional information from Toshiba about all the details for that particular product.
All right, very good. We have another one here. What are some of the typical margin stacks that grocerants have seen?
So from a prepared foods perspective, your gross margins outside of labor, which is a totally different, your gross margins on the product itself are often somewhere in the 25 to 30%, even when you calculate in all of the costs that are on those things, and oftentimes can go even higher depending upon the menu mix. And by menu mix, if you're selling steak dinners, it's a different conversation than if you're selling sandwiches and fried chicken. And so, but you're talking, some places are upwards of 60% gross margins on those products, which I can tell you in talking to grocers, there's very few products inside of their grocery store that are at 60% gross margin. And so how do we sell more sandwiches at 60% gross margin? And again, some of it also depends on their supply chain and how much of the product are they getting from inside of the store versus how much are they having it come in and already made. If they're buying bread from a wholesaler and having it brought in versus making it in the bakery, it's a different conversation. So that helps, but there's some grocers that we've talked to, some grocerants that we've talked to that are in the 60 to 70% gross margin areas on certain products, which is insane when you think about it.
All right. We have another one here. It says, what are some of the workflow efficiencies that retailers have experienced after installing POS solutions?
You see a lot of workflow efficiencies really depending on how you design your systems, right? So we have self-checkout systems. I talked a little bit about System 7 there a little bit. More and more people you get a double-edged opinion on this. They either hate self-checkout or they love it, right? And you don't really find people in the middle there. And a lot of retailers, a lot of grocerants, labor issues are facing everybody, right? So it's hard to find employees and reliable employees, people who want to stay for a long period of time, depending on the salaries that these people are paying. So what we try to do at Toshiba is we work with those grocerants and really identify their flow within the store itself. Do we need to put more point of sale systems at the front? Do we need to put them back where the food ordering is? Do we need to put a kiosk here? We really look at the footprint of the store itself to see where the efficiencies can be gained. We may even recommend a redesign of the floor plan based off of traffic identification and how to make it more efficient so that people can pick up more items and actually check out with more items. So it's kind of a broad question, Summer, in the sense that there's a lot of different ways you can crack that nut. And it really, takes our specialists. We have our services team. We have, consultants that go out there and help work with that. We've got our solution architect team that will help design the right solution for Grocerant. And, we work with Jeremy's team quite frequently on making sure that we have the right solution. And that not only encases the hardware, but any software that will help support that business. Anything that they are doing from an ordering or a inventory management perspective, we want to make sure that we have the right solution out there for those people that want to make sure that they manage their workflow so that it's a better and more efficient solution for them.
I would add one thing to that, Summer, is just we talked about that experience with the Deli Counter earlier in our conversation where they were queuing up with dozens of people standing at the Deli Counter. Those types of workflow things just change that because they didn't even know to ask about a piece of technology that could solve that problem. And so you look at where those sticking points are within especially the food service operation and go, okay, why does Subway walk you through the line versus Jimmy John's that, that you order and now you go sit down and they bring the food? And again, I'm not saying that one is right versus the other is right. It's really, what do you want your guest experience to be? And if, as you start to understand what that guest experience needs to look like, you absolutely can change the way and the throughput that you have from a workflow perspective by putting technology at the front side and the back side. We've all been to restaurants where we stand and then they don't ring it up till the end. We've all been out to places where you ring it up and then the food gets delivered to you or it texts you or your number gets called and you go pick it up. And so again, back to the guest experiences, what are you looking to do? And now how does technology enable you to do what you as a brand, what your executive's vision is for the future of that brand?
Absolutely. Thank you.
There's a couple of things too from a hardware perspective that I've seen out in the wild. I think our hardware solutions are very flexible, right? And we can do many things. So I may want, looking and evaluating what's happening at that store, at the grocery store. Do I need exit lanes? Do I need belted lanes? Do I need kind of the kiosk? Do I need a system 7? And the flexibility of the hardware itself is key, because if I walk into a self-checkout area, right, it's kind of a corral area, and I've got really right-hand and left-hand self-checkouts. And it can be very simple things, but from a customer perspective, it irritates me when I don't have the workflow from taking something out of my basket, scanning an item and putting it into my cart, and I almost have to do it backwards because they didn't go to the extreme of ensuring that workflow for each and every lane works right. And I think that's where what we're providing is a little bit different from a hardware perspective. So I wanted to kind of throw that in there as well.
Alrighty. Well, we have hit our 3 o'clock time here. But I just want to thank everyone again so much for joining our webinar today, and an absolute huge thank you to Toshiba and to CBS Northstar for putting on this really interesting, fascinating presentation. Someone commented and said that it was a great presentation with a lot of useful information, and I second that. It was very informative, and I'm sure that we'll be able to use this information going forward. So again, I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday afternoon.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much, Summer. And thank you, Jeremy and Michael, for joining me today. Take care.